As parents, we've welcomed lots of reporting and accountability and transparency in education, but as parents what we also look for is a government that will own responsibility for education, a government that's sensible enough to tell parents not to badger teachers, a government that's proprietous enough to actually admit when there's an error. And what we do see today is Ms Gillard must be exhausted for the media rampage that she's slaughtered upon us for the last 2 days, as she's nowhere fighting and lobbying for my children today when they're at their Western Sydney schools, irrelevant of what their ranking is, a great school community nonetheless. The school website is a curiosity and it makes for some interesting aspects if you want to look at it for what it is. Just another vein and another stream of information, but certainly nothing that could validate some of the choices that parents make for the very important notion of education around our children. So when the children go to school today, and my children go to school next week, and the parents around the state start making choices and around the nation start making choices based on these kind of league tables, we have to worry what the effect is on the actual student, on the teachers in the schools, and on the parents who have a faith and an investment in the communities. We don't just drop our children at the gate. We've long fought for the partnership role, and this demoralises the very essence of what we believe in, is that education belongs to all of us. It's a rite of passage in Australia, and we're thankful for that right. But while we sit by and watch the national government try and bastardise the results by league tables and allow this to occur, what we have to say is, take the information for what it is, let's listen to some of the dialogue around it, but at the same time, it's my child that goes to them schools that don't necessarily rank so well, and there is emotion invested in this because there are children at stake. And no child should be told that they can't succeed, they won't succeed, and they might not succeed.
I think Julia Gillard is in fact to be congratulated for bringing the profession together in a way it never has been before. Never before in the history of education in Australia have the principals, the teachers, the professional associations, the unions, and all those wonderful parents who support education come together on such a cause. In the past, we've taken a divided line on so many things. The papers today have tried to divide the profession, but the profession will stay united on this. We have been trying to advise in a calm and measured way the Deputy Prime Minister for the last 2 years that this would be a really foolish way to go in terms of improving student education. Their learning outcomes are not going to be improved by shining a spotlight on schools that are underfunded in disadvantaged areas, in rural and remote areas. We already know that those schools exist. The data has been around for a long time that if we put more funding and support into those schools, we will improve the outcomes for the students. We do not need an unreliable website with inaccurate information as a way of informing parents. Parents are much more intelligent than I think the Deputy Prime Minister gives them credit. Parents know that if they go and see their local school, they meet their principal, they speak to parents, they'll find out a lot more rich data than is available on the My School website. I'm really disappointed that the Deputy Prime Minister and the Ministers of Education across Australia have been so anti-educational in their approach. They want to improve the learning outcomes for kids, do it in a sensible way. Looking at the My School website, however, if we ignore the one-off diagnostic test and don't report on that, and I would urge the media to ignore that because it isn't a measure of school performance, we can actually find some data there that can be quite useful. There is some data there that shows that public schools need many more teachers to bring them up to the same standard as private schools. If you look at the data, you will see that it takes around about 15 students to get one teacher for a high school in the government sector, but only about 10 in the non-government sector because of the extra funding that goes there. That data is pretty sensible in terms of making use of it to improve the learning outcomes for students. We look at the support staff, the non-teaching staff, and if you look at the schools in the remote, the rural, the disadvantaged areas, they have far fewer support staff per teacher than you will find in the well-subsidised non-government sector. That's data. That's useful data. That's much more like the information that can be used to improve student learning outcomes than looking at a diagnostic test. And I would urge the Deputy Prime Minister and the various Ministers for Education to take a good, hard look at what they are doing, the damage that they can cause, and make sure that they move to a more informed, intelligent approach to supporting our students' education.
Well, imagine a school of 400 children, 23 different nationalities, large Indigenous population, support units for the intellectually disabled, children who travel off to OC classes at the end of year 4, children who enter selective high schools for sport, for performing arts, for intellectual capabilities. We're talking about your average southwest and western school, and some country schools, of course, as well. For those children who have sat the NAPLAN tests, and I include the disabled, there are some very obvious features that will occur. When we put all of those scores together, they will come out at a lower level. What has been revealed today has been something that we've tried to put some taboos on, and I guess not state the very, very obvious. The top schools from Mossman, from North Sydney, from Wallara, from Belrose and Paddington, are we surprised? Is anyone genuinely surprised that there is a nexus between high income, high socioeconomic status and high achievement? No. Not one whit. We are not surprised by that at all. Are we surprised that some of our less affluent, our disadvantaged, and I emphasise disadvantaged, not poverty, our genuinely disadvantaged schools, is it surprising that some of our children are not scoring as well? Not at all. But does that mean that those schools are underperforming? Does that mean our teachers are not doing their jobs? Does it mean that our parents are not as supportive? Of course not. Of course not. How useful is this? Not for 1 minute whatsoever. Parents in those schools are happy, knowing that their children, if they're bright, are having the extension of the curriculum, knowing if their children have a disability or a learning difficulty, that they are being catered for. Teachers within those schools are happy and productive. Parents are happy with their children in those schools. Parents looking outside those schools, however, are going to look at some of those raw scores, those incredibly misleading scores from a diagnostic test. What we have seen today has been the huge denigration, absolutely huge denigration, not only of our children and our schools, but of whole communities. We are incredibly disappointed as a profession, and I believe, as Sharon Johnson has so rightly put out, has so rightly expressed, our parents are devastated.